Hello, and welcome to a virtual HRA training session. For this course, note-taking material of your choice is suggested. Today's subject matter is avoid negative thinking traps. To better understand and become more attuned with our emotions, to identify common negative thinking traps, and gain insight for mitigating negative thinking traps as we encounter them, are the objectives of today's training. This curriculum is based on the University of Pennsylvania's Resiliency Center Master Resiliency Training, originally adapted for the U.S. Army. What to expect from today's training? As is with all HRA training, this session will include videos, discussion, and interactive activities. However, that said, today being a pre-recorded session, we'll ask that this is an introspective opportunity to look inward. Think about yourself, the role that you play in your community, in your family, and in the Air National Guard. A little bit about myself. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Amy Allman-Schmid. I'm the Human Resource Advisor at the Portland Air National Guard Base. We are the 142nd Wing in Portland, Oregon. You're seeing on the screen my Staffordshire Bull Terrier, Ollie. She's the dog I didn't want. My family got her while I was deployed, and too soon after we had lost a dog. I said at the time I didn't want any more pets. It's just too hard on the heart. 3 years later, she's my favorite person. And yes, I say person because she's treated like one in our house and she goes everywhere with me, and to be honest, she thinks she's one of us. Her favorite things are our outings and our hikes. If you follow me on Instagram, it's all I post. This doggo curbs my anxiety and my stress, which, as an added benefit, keeps me fit. She's not documented as such, but I would say she's everything I'd imagine a therapy dog should be. The learning edge. This right here is our comfort zone. As we age, this is where we hide. It's comfortable, it's safe, it's unchallenged. We know what to expect. We know the people inside this bubble, and we know the processes. What do you think happens to this space over time? Would you be surprised to hear that science says it shrinks? What I want in all HRA training is that you join me in the learning zone. Now, what most of us do as adults is step one toe outside of our comfort zone and into the learning zone. Or we weave back and forth just enough to make progress and get through a class, course, or curriculum. Now I'm going to test you and ask that you move a little bit further and we hang out on the edge of chaos, fear, and panic. This, my friends, is the learning zone, the learning edge. Pardon me. Now, stepping out into chaos, fear, and panic is not natural for anyone, except maybe children who look to jump that ledge repeatedly throughout any given day. The learning edge is where I would like to challenge each of you to push yourself during all HRA classes. Get out of our comfort zone, grow on the subject matter, jump into the water. HRA courses are safe spaces where we can move beyond just awareness and actually obtain skills that each of us can apply to start moving both our personal and professional space in the organization. Emotions. Woo! Talk about jumping right into an uncomfortable place. Do me a favor, in that note-taking material you pulled out at the beginning of class a few slides back, Write down how you feel right now, your emotion. Can you identify it? Do you know what it is? Once you've identified it, doodle an emoji of how you feel right now. I'll give you just a minute to draw that emoji. Dealing effectively with emotions is a key leadership skill, and naming our emotions is something psychologists call labeling. Today, I want to help you identify and label emotions. This is an important first step in dealing with them effectively. This can be harder than it sounds. Many of us may struggle to identify what exactly we're feeling, and oftentimes the most obvious label isn't actually the most accurate. There are many reasons why this is difficult. We've been trained to believe that strong emotions should be suppressed. We have certain and sometimes unspoken societal and organizational rules against expressing them, or we were never taught a language to accurately describe our emotions. Now, on your tablet or notebook or your note-taking material, I hope that you have now written down your current emotion and doodled a small emoji of how you're feeling. Now I want you to share. I want you to share out loud with yourself. Walk yourself through that feeling. Why do you feel this way? If you have a good handle on your own personal background of your current emotion, we're going to move on. Stick with that note-taking material. What I want you to do in the next 2 minutes is list every emotion you can think of. If you're using a tablet or a phone, feel free to Google a list of emotions. See what beautiful picture you can find pre-listed for you. Another 30 seconds or so to continue listing all the emotions you can think of. As you're winding down in these last few seconds, I'm putting a list of emotions up on the screen. Feel free to screenshot this and use it later. I chose this list in particular because it lists anger, sad, anxious, and hurt first. Today we're identifying negative scenarios and negative thoughts, and I wanted these terms at the forefront of your mind. You may have found several lists of emotions if you Googled it, and hopefully the positive emotions were at the top of the chart. This one, for the purpose of this class, works. Why should I care? If you're at this point in your thought process on this subject matter, this is exactly why you should care. We train airmen to avoid negative thinking traps because negative thinking traps thwart productive action. They delay completion of mission or outcomes and are counterproductive to interpersonal communication. Teaching this skill builds self-regulation, self-awareness, optimism, and mental agility, all of which are desirable traits of teams and leaders. Today, we will identify the most common types of negative thinking traps and garner insights on how to mitigate them. All right, back to our note-taking material. I need you to take the next 2 minutes and think of 3 emotionally triggering events. Write them down for me. You're going to reflect back on these events as we move forward in the class. List 3 events in your own life where negative emotions were triggered. This could be an event that happens regularly, a simple act that drives you nuts in your own household, a human behavior that gets on your every last nerve. This could be a reoccurring action, something that gets to you with each encounter. Or you may list a specific, this one time, type event, maybe even a traumatic occurrence. Now, thinking about these things may trigger a negative physiological response. If you start sweating, you grit your teeth, or your face gets flushed, you cuss and swear in your head or under your breath at the thought of an event, that's a great one for the purpose of this class. Now, unfortunately, we can trap ourselves accidentally here in this step of the class in simply recollecting and reflecting on a negative experience. So let's move on. I'll give you another 40 seconds or so to jot down your 3 emotionally triggering events. All right, what is a thinking trap? A thinking trap is an overly rigid pattern in thinking that can cause us to miss critical information about a situation or individual. No one can look at things positively all the time. Sometimes bad things happen, like getting fired, having an argument with a friend, or losing someone you love. It's normal and healthy to feel upset and have negative thoughts when these things happen. Healthy thinking means looking at the entire situation, the positive, the negative, and the neutral parts, and then coming to a conclusion. In other words, healthy thinking means looking at life and the world in a balanced way. Thinking traps cause us to miss critical information, undermine our mental toughness, and lead to inaccurate understandings of any given situation. Now, today we're going to talk about the 6 most common types of thinking traps. Number 1, jumping to conclusions. Imagine your favorite person, friend, or relative. They've just departed on a cross-country drive and they promise to call you each night when they stop at his or her destination. Day 1 goes by and you don't get a call. Day 2 comes by and dinner rolls around and you've still not heard anything. You reach out, no answer. You go about your evening and try one more time before you go to bed. Still, no answer. Remember, this is your favorite person on the planet. Obviously, the worst has happened, or this person moved away specifically to get away from you, and you're never going to hear from them again. Right? Wrong. Believing one is certain about a situation, despite having little or no evidence, is jumping to conclusions. What you'll see on the continuing 5 slides is in the black box, the definition of the black text or the thinking trap at the top of the screen. The teal line at the bottom of the screen are our mitigation strategies. So I'll go through each one of these, presenting a scenario, giving you an example. You can use one of your examples, slide it in instead of mine, and then work through the process of mitigating that negative thinking trap yourself. So here, in this case, we've jumped ourselves right into the conclusion that we're never going to see this person again. We've not addressed some situation, some communication prior to the person leaving, and in fact, they were leaving because of us. Or perhaps you could jump to conclusions, worst case scenario style, and think the worst has happened, that our family, our friend, this favorite person on the planet has crashed into a ditch somewhere and died or laid up in a hospital, and spin ourselves into an absolute frizzy without taking into consideration all of the evidence. How do we do that? Slow down. Slow our thinking. Avoid jumping to conclusions. Have you ever experienced a time in your life where you've fallen into this thinking trap? Or do you know anyone who does this regularly? This is a very common, very human thinking trap to find ourselves in. Moving on. Mind reading. Assuming that you know what another person is thinking or expecting another person to know what you are thinking. Feel free to check your notes if there's a scenario that you've got where in fact you recognize that emotionally triggering event caused you to do some mind reading, or another person in the scenario did some mind reading. Feel free to insert your example here. The example I'm going to use. There was a 13-year-old girl who sent her mother a text. Her mother responded to the text listing all the chores that needed to get done at home when the 13-year-old got home from school. The mother didn't give precise directions, just a simple list. The 13-year-old daughter went home and completed the list. However, on the list, the mother had said, "Take garbage out." Now, what the mother meant to say was take all of the garbages in the house out to the outside bin and then put the outside bin on the curb so it's ready for garbage day in the morning. The mother gets home, immediately is frustrated that the bins aren't at the street. I asked the 13-year-old to put the garbage out, and she can't even do that. The mother, before she even gets in the house, is completely frustrated by the lack of ability, the lack of follow through, the laziness of the 13-year-old. The mother going into the house creates almost immediate negative energy with the 13-year-old because the 13-year-old was left doing some mind reading and the mother was doing some mind reading of her own. What neither party did here was speak up, express themselves, and ask for more information. The mother could have very easily come in the house and asked the daughter about the chore list and what she got done, what she didn't get done. The daughter could have asked for clarification. "Mom, you said that this was something I needed to do, but what did you mean exactly?" Now that evening turned volatile and sad and ended in tears and door slamming when it could have been a very simple communication. Instead, both mother and daughter got sucked into the mind reading thinking trap. Next slide. Me. Believing you are the sole cause of every problem you encounter. It's my fault. I didn't do it hard enough. I didn't work long enough. I didn't express myself enough. That problem over there is all about me. Everything that I'm encountering right now is me and my fault and all about my inabilities. Class example I'd like to use here. Again, feel free to insert your emotionally triggering event if it's more appropriate and resonates with you. But the example I'd like to use here is that of a father who's struggling because his child, now remember, all of these could be substituted for supervisor, airman, or mother, child, father, child, grandparent, grandchild, co-worker, boss. Utilize the words that mean the most to you. This example, back to a father and son. The father is very frustrated with his son because his son's not doing so good in school. The way he learns, the way he turns in homework, the way he keeps organized or the lack thereof organization. He's not the star athlete. And the father gets stuck saying, it's my fault. I did this. I created this. I didn't push him hard enough. The father continues to blame himself so often that he doesn't give himself the opportunity to look outward and see how others contributed or circumstances play a role. Now, a conversation that I have with many parents and with many leaders is that when we're talking about another individual, we sometimes fail to realize that they have their own thoughts, their own brain, their own ideas. And our children, sometimes we forget that they are an individual themselves, whether they're an infant or they're fully grown and out of the house. It took two sets of brain matter and life to make that child, and they are uniquely their own. So there's no way that things that are going on with our kids are uniquely about a singular me, me, me. Stopping when we find ourselves triggered and in those moments believing that everything about a scenario is our fault, looking outward and really writing down, taking note of how others contributed or circumstances played a role will help you pull yourself out of the me, me, me mind trap. Up next, the opposite of me, 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 them, them, them. Believing that others or other people or circumstances are the sole cause of every problem you encounter. The example here I'm going to take is a lovely one. I think it might be universal for anyone who drives or anyone who walks through crosswalks in New York City. The case of the rude driver. In this example, you've been cut off in traffic. Now, being cut off in traffic or being affected by a rude driver in any scenario causes an immediate emotional response in many of us. It's common to be aggressive, to be angry. That's why road rage is a thing. People have died over being cut off in traffic. And several people in those moments do not have the wherewithal to look inward and see how they may have contributed to that scenario. In those moments, we can, in a rage, get stuck in the them, them thinking trap, believing that everyone else on the road contributed to this, but we did not. Everyone else on the road has a problem, but we do not. It's all about them, the driver that didn't use their blinker, the driver that cut you off, the driver that slammed on their brakes, the driver that took the turn too fast, the driver that cut into your lane taking the turn, the driver who didn't stop all the way at the four-way stop, the eager driver who inched out too far and made you think you were going to get sideswiped. Driving, for whatever reason, creates a them negative thinking trap on the regular. It's almost built in. Because we're taught to be on alert and aware, we feel like we are the ones that are in control and safest on the road, and them, everyone else around, it's their problem. It's their fault. Next time you find yourself here, pause, look inward, take a breath, and think to yourself, how did I contribute to this situation? Next, always, always, always. Believing that negative events are unchangeable and that you have little or no control over them. Think to yourself, have you ever been in a situation? Do you have a scenario that you can insert here? Let's use an airman scenario. Believing that negative events are unchangeable and you have little or no control over them might be an easy mind trap to fall into if you're a junior airman. If you're young Airman new to the Air Force, new to the Air National Guard, you may believe that everything you do and everything that you contribute and every step that you take is without your own control. That negative events in your current existence are unchangeable because leadership always has control, because leadership always sets the schedule, because leadership always determines the outcome. This is an easy place to find yourself if you don't take responsibility over what you do have control of. When you're working alongside an airman, or perhaps you are an airman in this situation, the mitigation strategies for avoiding this negative thinking trap are to grab control over what you are empowered to manage. What about this situation is changeable? A lot of times, as junior airmen, what's changeable is our attitude, our own personal feelings about the situation. We have the opportunity to take control of our physical selves, our mental selves. Dwelling on those things will help us escape the always, always, always mind trap. Everything, everything, everything. Judging one's entire worth on one event, or believing that what caused the problem is going to negatively affect all areas of one's life. Here's a lovely example. Again, military related. You are early on in your career, you're TDY, you're out enjoying yourselves. Maybe you've had one too many. Maybe there was just a little bit of dancing on a table. Maybe a few articles of clothing came off, and maybe somebody was offended. Meh. Just an example. Perhaps that when you sober up the next day and you're sitting in front of the first sergeant and or commander being told what a problem that was the night before, sitting there in your negative thinking trap, everything, everything, everything is going to be negatively affected from here on out. If you sit and dwell on all the ways in which you've gone wrong, you're going to sit in the negative thinking trap. You're going to get stuck. If you believe one bad moment, one bit of bad behavior is going to affect all areas of your life, you are thwarted from taking purposeful action, from making amends and moving forward. What we need to do in the case of being stuck in the everything, everything, everything mind trap is zero in on the specific behavior or emotion that put you in that place that caused the issue, and then determine what specific areas of my life will be affected. In this scenario, you, at the beginning of your career, you may get held back a little bit. There may be some hurdles to overcome with your direct leadership. There may be apologies, which may be a bit of embarrassment for you to make to those of your teammates who are on that TDY with you. However, it is not going to affect the way your dog loves you when you return, or the way your boss back home is going to do business with you 10 years down the road. Thinking about things on an everything, everything level is weighted, it's heavy, it holds us down. Be specific when you find yourself in an everything, 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 woe is me scenario. Be specific about your behavior, the emotion, and be honest. What areas of my life will be affected? Ladies and gentlemen, that was all 6 of the most common negative thinking traps. Now what? Identify your own patterns. When you're triggered emotionally and you go to a negative place, what do? Which one of those 6 negative thinking traps do you fall into most commonly? Ask yourself those critical questions and identify important information you may have missed. Use mitigation strategies. And if you feel like it, check out heretohelp.bc.ca toolkits. This is a literal checklist that walks you through a negative situation and helps you in a computer-based survey system walk through getting yourself out of a negative mental mind trap. It's phenomenal. If you have that kind of time, or you're experiencing a life crisis or a really heavy-hearted negative thinking trap, I cannot recommend this toolkit enough. Takeaways from today. Negative thinking traps are common. They narrow our field of vision. If we take a few minutes and notice our own patterns, can get better, and we can move through these negative thinking traps faster. We can use critical questions to address our own negative thinking traps, and we can build mental agility. It is common to fall into a thinking trap, particularly when stressed. They narrow our field of vision. Thinking traps often lead to us missing important information. When we determine what our patterns are, we can mitigate them. Be on the lookout for the most common ways you fall into negative thinking patterns. Help broaden your awareness and the awareness of others. Mental agility is a primary target of avoiding thinking traps. At this point in time, I'd love to take your questions via email, text message. I'll share that information with you at the end. Feedback for the Human Resource Advisor is critical. If you take your cell phone and hover your camera over this QR code, it should take you immediately to a SurveyMonkey. Please utilize effective communication on number 4 as the training provided. If for some reason this QR code doesn't work for you, please email me and I will send it to you directly. My email address is amy.l.almond, like the nut, ALMOND, -Schmid, SCHMID, .mil@mail.mil. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.